Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Fiscal Philosophy YouTube channel. UnitedHealth Group, UNH. This healthcare giant is down over 50% year to date. This represents what some are calling perhaps the next meta, a stock that fell greatly from its highs in spite of having a pretty strong moat and being one of the largest players, if not the largest player, in the area of the economy in which they operate. However, there's more to it than just stock is down a lot, therefore it's cheap. There's an issue with a bit of a compression in their profitability, as well as some civil and criminal court cases and the recent, exit of their CFO and replacement thereof. This creates an air of uncertainty as to whether they can right the ship, and also perception of the company and have a recovery in the stock price. All of that being said, I would say for almost sure the valuation is cheap here, and it's just a matter of what is going to happen going forward to bring about a recovery, what's going to happen with the court cases, etc. Will regulators clamp down on them? Is it going to be a prolonged, slow recovery, or is it going to re-rate once earnings start to show strength again? The company usually commands a pretty strong multiple of earnings in the mid-20s, likely because they are seen as sort of necessary, maybe even too big to fail, and they seemed to produce what looks like a very steady and fairly predictable level of growth over time, which means as long as you don't egregiously overpay, you would think that you would eventually get a pretty solid return on your money over the long term. Now, regulation is one of the potential headwinds because in their health insurance segment, there is a requirement that 85% of premiums collected actually go to pay for patient care. So their profit is all based on how well they predict what the care charges will come out to in the next year, so that they charge the right amount of premiums in order to hit the closest they can to that maximum profit level. The revenue chart being how it is, sort of that up and to the right situation, very consistent, is a result of the fact that premiums tend to go up over time as costs go up over time. However, their ability to be profitable does depend pretty heavily on them predicting pretty closely the exact amount that those costs will go up, because the premiums that they're going to collect, they decide what they're going to charge for those in advance. Because anybody who's employed, you have an open enrollment period through your employer, most likely in the fall, and that covers what you're going to pay towards next year's premiums. Well, nobody has a time machine, so as you can see from their net income, it looks like they aren't 100% accurate in their predictions of what those increases in costs might be in the subsequent year. However, I would argue that over long time scales, UNH is very good at pivoting and correcting course. If they do miss the mark a little bit, they can, the following year, usually adjust and get a lot closer. So I personally think their fundamentals are likely to continue to grow at a moderately good pace over time. We're not talking about tripling their profits or anything, but steady increases on average over time. In the meantime, while you wait for them to correct course, you have a fairly robust shareholder capital return. How do you get that? Well, they pay out a reasonably high dividend yield, 3.5%. Now, I know it's not a yield max fund, but it's in line with a lot of other defensive staple type stocks like Coca-Cola and that kind of thing. Plus, their payout ratio is relatively low compared to net income, 36.8% of net income. Granted, that's trailing, and a trailing buyback yield of 1%. Now, If I was United Healthcare, I might try to press the gas a bit on the buyback while you have this temporary drawdown in share price. But that's just me. I also recognize that perhaps you're a little bit worried about some of the pending, say, regulatory issues facing them, possibly legal issues. This is not a political channel per se. However, I think it's important to point out when you're worried about the regulatory environment or the whole healthcare system changing as a whole in a way that hurts United Health, here is what they spent in the 2024 cycle on various campaign contributions. And a lot of these are just members of Congress, possibly senators. They spent well over $1.5 million. Over 80% went to incumbents versus a smaller fraction going to non-incumbents. This, to me, implies that they are investing a lot of money to keep things more or less the same with regards to the system and how the healthcare industry and the government interact with one another. Also, multiple members of Congress have been reported as owning the stock, so they're pretty heavily incentivized to protect their own investment. That's just one potential thing that I look at with regards to this company and the risk from big government. I view that as small or somehow mitigated by the fact that there's an alignment of interests. And full disclosure, I have yet to really build out any kind of a position in the stock. I'll probably start with maybe a tracker position of like a share or something, not a real position, and see what happens. Now, I could change my mind and decide that it is worth a full allocation, but I haven't gotten there just yet at the time of recording. But I would be silly to not at least see that there's some potential here. This stock is a juggernaut in their industry, and barring an enormous disruption, they should be a solid holding for the long run. And I understand some people have their different moral objections, and I fully get that and respect that. If you want to avoid for those reasons, that's fine. I personally just look at things from a money perspective when regards to stock picking. I would personally greatly appreciate it if you would like, comment, and subscribe for the algorithm. Also, consider joining my Discord, linked in the description. And catch me every Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern, Cash Flow Kings Live. Also, consider following me on the X platform at Mr. Macho Mog. The display name is Fiscal Philosophy, and you'll see a guy, a little cartoon with a pair of sunglasses and a tank top, my signature outfit. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Take it easy.